What's up, everybody? Kong Spidey Zilla back at it with another video, and tonight's video is sorry, of course, a dang ad had to show up, but back at it with another video. Tonight is going to be a tier list ranking of all the King Kong and Godzilla movies. So let me see if it's the live action movies here. Yep, although there is one animated movie, and yeah, there's a couple of King Kong animated movies. Just to let you know, I'm not gonna rank those ones because I haven't seen them personally, or the anime trilogy Godzilla movies. So, yep. So the animated ones are basically gonna get like are not gonna be ranked by me because I personally haven't watched them. This is just the live action movies only. And I'm gonna give off a big warning right off the bat. This is gonna be my own personal opinion on the films. This is my perspective, my taste, my preference in the movies. So just letting you know that, and I'm gonna try to make this like not be too long, but anyways, let's get started. So we have the OG, one of the OGs of kaiju films, and that is King Kong 1933. You all know that has to be S tier. That is just revolutionary in the world of filmmaking. That is where it's gonna stand. It's the original classic tale of Beauty and Beast. It's the classic. It's a classic. I mean, there's there's not a lot that needs to be said about this movie. Just legendary effects by legendary stop motion effects by Willis H. O'Brien. Um, just good message to the film. Um, the revolutionary effects and what a revolutionary film in general for the world of movies and kaiju and fictional art in general. Um, you got the classic iconic actors such as Robert Armstrong and Fay Ray. Um, yeah, not really. I don't really have that much to say, honestly. But the movie's a classic. It is a masterpiece. I mean, come on, it's the original 1933 King Kong. I feel like it has to be S tier. Um, yep. Alrighty. Next up is going to be Son of Kong. Now, Son of Kong, where are you gonna go? Son of Kong. Either A or B tier. I'm gonna say B tier. And it's definitely gonna be a very strong B tier. It's a strong B tier. Strong B tier. Like almost exactly A. Um, I just think uh I'm just more into other Godzilla and King Kong movies compared to this one. But until we finally get to Kiko, the son of Kong, he's really great. I really like him. Um, this one is kind of rushed though, but definitely like not as like amazing as like standards as the first movie. But I will say the huge point this movie gets is the fact that I really actually super cared for Kiko at the end of the movie. Like I felt connected to him as a character. I honestly felt more connected to him as a character compared to King Kong in the 1933 original. So, uh, I think Carl Denham, the actor who plays Carl Denham, he comes back. I think he's the only returning character, along with I believe Englehorn and a couple of others. That's kind of it. Yeah, it's gonna be a strong B because the rest of the movie is just not as good as the original 1933. But what makes it very strong is that it's actually more emotional than the first one, in my opinion. Because I didn't feel anything else at the end of the 1933 film other than that it was a classic masterpiece and that was it. But yeah, that's the movie. I actually cried at the end. I actually cared for the son of Kong. So, yep. Um, I kind of don't have a lot to say, but has some interesting action sequences, like where he fights the bear and that stuff. That was pretty cool. And now we're going into the OG of Godzilla movies, that being Godzilla 1954. Obviously, an S tier. It's going to go right alongside with the 1933 King Kong. So, and if you want me to say which one I prefer of these two, I'm not choosing. I'm not choosing between these two masterpieces right here because if I picked one over the other, to me, that would be considered a dang crime because I'm an equal fan of both King Kong and Godzilla. So, and I like them both equally as characters. So, really, if I choose one original film over the other, it's gonna feel like a dang crime. So, to me, these two are equal on equal ground. King Kong 1933 is the OG, and 1954 was inspired by it. But personally, I think Godzilla in 1954, in terms of emotionality and in terms of the message, is more of a powerful film, and in terms of revolutionary movie making, they're both equally powerful. However, King Kong 1933 is the OG, and it's the film that inspired Godzilla. And it was even more revolutionary in the world of filmmaking. So to me, these are like equal. Like 1954, just great story, great characters, great message, and of course Godzilla's great in it as always. Um, the soundtrack by Akira Ifukube, just great. I didn't say a lot about 1933, but the soundtrack really great. King Kong himself is good. It's gonna be shocking, but I personally cared. I honestly felt more horrible for Godzilla in the 1954 movie than I did for King Kong in the 1933 film. I don't know if that's controversial or not, but that's just me, honestly. Because I do feel bad for King Kong when he dies at the end of the 1933 original, but I really feel no like extreme connection to him as a character, or you're not gonna find me crying at the end of the movie. Just like what a classic. Other than that, it was Beauty that killed the beast. However, 1954, I cry every time when Godzilla dies at the end. Um, yeah, just really emotional, and just there's multiple emotional scenes throughout the movie. So, very, very powerful moments. I'm sorry if I couldn't get a better camera setup. This is just the best I can do. I don't know how to do screen record or all that stuff. So, you guys and gals just have to get used to my style. Raids again. Um, it's gonna get a B tier. I know there's kind of hate for this one. It is rushed into production after the 1954 original classic masterpiece, but I personally say it's an important part of Godzilla history because it's the second black and white film. It's the first appearance of one of my favorite Godzilla monsters, Anguirus, and it's the first time where Godzilla fights another monster. It's the first Godzilla kaiju fight in fictional history and in Godzilla history in general. So like it's special in its own right, and the analog horror Godzilla stuff seems to take a lot of inspiration from this film for some reason. That just makes it very interesting. And personally, I don't think it's as bad as of a sequel as everybody makes it out to be. So to me, it's going in B tier, but it's not, unlike Son of Kong, it's not a really strong B tier. It's more like an average B tier. So, and fitting that we're doing a tier list between these two because their first crossover movie, King Kong versus Godzilla, 1962. Um, Let me fix that. There we go. King Kong vs. Godzilla 1962. It's the versus movie classic. It's a crossover classic, only edged out by Frankenstein meets the Wolfman in terms of like predation, I guess. But both Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, the Universal monster crossovers in general, and this 1962 King Kong vs. Godzilla movie are crossover classics. It's more epic in some way because even though Frankenstein meets the Wolfman and the classic Universal monsters were the OGs, these guys were OGs too, but Uh, but the Universal classic monster mashups happened before. Even then, Universal owned the same characters. King Kong and Godzilla were not owned by the same company. Sorry, like if I messed anything up, but what I'm trying to say is the Universal monsters are already owned by the same company, Universal Studios. King Kong and Godzilla were not owned by the same company. King Kong RKO at the time, and Godzilla by Toho. And King Kong switched around companies ever since and ended up in the public domain every now and then. Meanwhile, Toho has just stuck to Godzilla, and now Warner Bros. And Legendary own the rights to the legendary MonsterVerse films. But Toho still, I believe, sponsors them, and they're in there. But King Kong vs. Godzilla 1962. Um, I know there's a good chunk of you that might consider this should be in the S tier, but it's gonna be here in the A tier because there are a couple things that hold it back. No offense, it's I hate to say this, but this is my own personal opinion. It is one of the Godzilla movies, King Kong films that probably didn't age good in areas because King Kong and Godzilla got so advanced as characters as the film goes on. Like this was just begging for like an epic big budget blockbuster rematch between the two, and we would get there, but not until decades upon decades later. And there was supposed to be King Kong vs. Godzilla 2, but that never came to light. There was supposed to be a 90s Heisei version of these two fighting again, but like because of the huge illegal legal issue, company issue, rights issue that King Kong was going through at the time, instead it just ended up being Godzilla versus King Ghidorah, and we got the rest of the Heisei Godzilla series. Yeah, but we finally got that in 2021, which we'll get to much later down the tier list. But 1962 King Kong versus Godzilla, I'm sorry, in my opinion, didn't age well in some areas because they both got so advanced as characters. It just needed that blockbuster epic big rematch to me. And I grew up with the Peter Jackson King Kong and the later Toho Godzilla films, only like some Showa. So when I saw this, like, I really super liked it, but like, it just needed a modern rematch. It needed a huge update, I feel. And what doesn't help some areas of the movie age well is this is by far the worst version of King Kong ever in live action film. Um, my least favorite version of the character in live action film. Like, I didn't care for him as a character all that much. His design looked like roadkill, just like everybody else says. Um, he has highlight moments, such as swinging Godzilla by his tail, the shoving tree down the throat, the cool lightning powers, and paying homages to the original 1933 film. But other than that, yeah, my least favorite version of the character. Godzilla's great in the movie, though. I personally like Godzilla in every single movie. I can't say the same for King Kong because of Toho King Kong. I know there is a YouTube video saying that why the Japanese Kong is great and he works, and that's a if it's one of the positives I could say about this King Kong. He made King Kong and he helped making this crossover a possibility, and they created the concept of a kaiju Kong coexisting alongside Godzilla. So, or King Kong as a character that can cross over with Godzilla. So, other than that, it has fun kaiju action moments, great animation. It's their first time in color. It's the original King Kong versus Godzilla in 1962. I mean, how could you not put it in A tier? At least for me, great enjoyable human characters actually. Um, great soundtrack by Akira Fukube. Um, just overall just great, except for the couple little nitpicks I have that really wear it down, especially King Kong being the biggest flaw of the film. But the fight scenes are great. I mean, memorable moments like the shoving tree down throat and the swinging Godzilla by his tail, King Kong knocking himself out, of course, and just many memorable moments. And then the iconic ending of them, crashing into the pagoda and then crashing, falling into the ocean. King Kong emerges. the judo flipping, and just like a lot of it, you know, great. So it's gonna go in. Plus, very special to me because this movie created the concept of two favorite characters of mine crossing over in a movie, and I think it has to be special to me because this might be one of the very first crossover films I've ever seen, or very first crossover. So it's worthy of an A tier. So next up is Mothra versus Godzilla, and it's a Godzilla classic. Uh, I think it deserves an A tier. I think it has a really good message. The fighting between Mothra and Godzilla was good. It definitely got better in the later films in the series, but yeah, I think it's a Godzilla classic. I mean, what else can you say? Um, Interesting human characters, memorable soundtrack. Godzilla in here is like menacing and he's great and that stuff, but he has a couple of funny, clumsy moments though. Um, Mothra's good in here as well. Some of these I'm not really gonna have that much to say about, but others I'm gonna have more to say about. Um, Other than that, I really don't have that much problems with this one. But other than it's a Godzilla classic, so and Mothra did have her own movie and was her own character, along with Rodan. Funny enough, before they ended up evolving into Godzilla characters and ended up becoming mostly associated with the Godzilla series and the Godzilla character. So, and that's gonna lead us into the next movie, which came out the same year, later the same year, which is Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, another Godzilla classic worthy of an A tier. Um, just other, what can I say? It's another Godzilla classic. Godzilla's cool as always, even in Son of Godzilla, where he looks his absolute worst. I'll get to that. Uh, Mothra Larvae is pretty cool. Rodan's really cool in this movie. The fighting between Godzilla and Rodan was just a memorable Godzilla moment and just really fun. Their big battle against King Ghidorah at the end was pretty fun. The human story was interesting, in my own personal opinion. A great, memorable soundtrack. Just has the elements of what makes a great Godzilla movie and a Godzilla classic. Really, not that much else to say other than like Mothra vs. Godzilla. It's another Godzilla classic, and getting right into another Godzilla classic, Invasion of the Astro Monster. Um, Let me see. Now this one's not going to be an A tier. I think probably right there. Um, I don't think it's as good as these two, especially this one, 1962 King Kong vs. Godzilla. But I do think it's a pretty enjoyable entry. It's a solid one. It's another Godzilla classic. Memorable Godzilla moments. Invasion of the Astro Monster. I think it's a decent, enjoyable Godzilla flick, in my own personal opinion. I personally liked it. I like the sci-fi take on it. Um, like I'm not really super big on it, but I think it was pretty good. It did start to feel a little tired at points, and it kind of felt like a little bit of Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster recycled a little bit. It's not exactly the same movie, definitely not for sure. Um, that's for sure. It's not the same film. It's different. I think it had interesting human story moments, in my own personal opinion, but had an interesting plot. Godzilla's cool. You're gonna hear that a lot. Rodan is cool. King Ghidorah was a good villain again. Um, Iconic moments such as Godzilla body slamming King Ghidorah, and then him doing the iconic Godzilla dance. This introduced the full-on aliens into the series. They were technically in Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster and mentioned a lot, but this is where they fully, truly made their like first appearance. You know, King Ghidorah is the alien kaiju, of course, and a great soundtrack. I mean, you're gonna hear that a lot, and a lot of Godzilla's just one of those franchises that just have great soundtracks in general. So, yep, not really much else to say about Invasion of the Astro Monster, other than hate to sound like a broken record, but another Godzilla classic. Although, in my opinion, not as enjoyable as these three up here, but I think it's a pretty good one. at least to me. Ebro, Hoarder of the Deep. Now we're gonna get a more lower tier one. Um, Fun fact: this is my first Godzilla movie. I watched it on the Good Times VHS tape that originally belonged to my sister. Um, Yep. Um, so this is the true first Godzilla movie I ever seen. I grew up with. I think the first one I did seen was 1998 was the 1998 film, and then I think my first exposure to Godzilla was the 1998 animated series. But in terms of the Toho Japanese Godzilla, this is my first one right here. So I'm gonna have a soft spot for it, but I know this one has its haters and dislikers. But personally, watching it again, sure, it's probably just nostalgia, but personally, I don't think it's as bad as most Godzilla fans make it out to be. I think it has its good moments, but it is a bit weird because this was originally supposed to be King Kong instead of Godzilla. Yes, the Toho was originally going to make another Toho King Kong movie. It would have ended up being a trilogy, and then it would have carried on the King Kong Escape. So Toho would have been a trilogy of Toho King Kong films, but they decided to use Godzilla because that's when they were getting issues with RKO and what to use the character for, and they decided to just use Godzilla again, and that's why Godzilla acts weird in this movie at times. He ends up having an attraction to a girl, a native girl in the movie. Not like all out like King Kong, but like capturing her and that stuff. But just like there's just that weird scene. If you're a Godzilla fan, you know what I'm talking about. But it's nowhere near as bad as nothing is nowhere near as bad as 1976 King Kong, and we're gonna get into that later down the road. But it is weird though. It's very characteristic of Godzilla. Ibra, I don't mind Ibra. There are definitely cooler Godzilla villains. Much more. Mothra's in this one, which is pretty cool. I was kind of interested in the human story. I didn't mind the plot too much. Godzilla does take a while to show up. Um, it's gonna go in a weaker B tier, I would say. I personally enjoy this one and I have a soft spot for it, but that isn't gonna make me put it in like A tier. So I think it's an okay entry. I'll give it. I'll say it's okay. Now, speaking of the King Kong Toho trilogy, I was talking to you about, ended up being a duology instead because they couldn't, I guess, rights issues couldn't allow them to fit in, a second one, so they just had to stick to two. It would have ended up being three, but they ended up using Godzilla because of rights issue and this and that. King Kong Escapes. This one's also going to be a B tier. I I like the concept of it. King Kong taking on a mechanized version of himself. It's really cool. Um, the kaiju action sequences are enjoyable to watch. Gorosaurus makes his first appearance in this one, which is really cool. I think he's a cool kaiju. He's one of my favorites. I know, kind of cheating because he's mostly dinosaur-ish like, but I don't know. He's one of my favorites. King Kong. Uh, I kind of slightly cared for him more as a character in this one as opposed to 1962 King Kong vs. Godzilla, but that's not really saying much. His design still looks pretty bad. Um, a good soundtrack. uh, what else? I didn't mind the story too much. Not really that much to say about this one. It is fully based on that Rankin Bass cartoon, I believe, which I've not watched. So, but I think it's a decent kaiju flick. I would put it above Ibra Horror of the Deep. Maybe slightly above rates again, but it's not beating Invasion of the Astro Monster or Son of Kong. So a pretty average B, I will give it. So not that much else to say. Son of Kong, another recognized Godzilla classic. I mean, Son of Godzilla, my bad. We already did Son of Kong. Um, this is Son of Godzilla. Now, another recognized Godzilla classic. I really like Son of Godzilla. Now, this is one of those mixed bag Godzilla movies. Some Godzilla fans either love it, some Godzilla fans either hate it. I'm on the side where I like it, but I don't really super duper like it, like in the A tier. Um, uh, Probably like with these two and this one. I think it's a good entry. I mean, it's pretty entertaining. Uh, seeing Godzilla raise his son was pretty cool and pretty fun to watch. There's some great memorable moments, great memorable classic Godzilla moments in this, and him beating the heck out of the other bug monsters on the island was pretty fun. Uh, it had interesting human story moments. I'll give it that. Uh, the classic iconic main theme. Uh, but this by far has the worst suit design of Godzilla ever. In terms of like live action, the main live action movies, like he just he looks terrible. But I cared for him as a character, and he kicked major butt. So I was able to like almost forgive it. So funny enough, I care for Godzilla more in this movie than King Kong in 1962. So, despite his appearance looking horrible, his I would say um his character and personality I did enjoy. Minya, the infamous Manila. Um, I don't dislike him as much, nowhere near as much as everybody else does. I think he's okay, but like we definitely seen a better son of Godzilla in the Heisei era, so not really that much else to say. But I was one of the Godzilla fans that liked it. Okay, here we go. Destroy all monsters. This may be a little controversial, maybe not. Maybe some of you will agree, some of you disagree. Destroy all monsters. Uh, you know, I it, it's it feels like it's more about the alien invasion and the humans more than the actual monsters themselves. It, it's the same thing as Invasion of the Astro Monster, basically. Although there's no like fighting on a different planet, it's still a different film. It's just it's a similar plot to Invasion of the Astro Monster, but still different. But I'm not all that interested in the human story in this one because they also felt like the same thing in Invasion of the Astro Monster. Um, I mean, it's a total tease because it has all these monsters in it, and they advertise it a lot. But it feels like it's more about the human story than the monsters. But human story is important and all, but like we should have gotten a lot more monster action. I believe there is a deleted scene where Godzilla and Manda start fighting each other. There's a deleted scene of that, but makes you wish that deleted scene was in. And originally, I think Baragon was supposed to attack a certain city, but he ended up getting replaced by Gorosaurus in that scene instead. Baragon's still in the movie, but even like the monsters fight and interact with King Ghidorah, it's not all of them really. There's other monsters in the background, and then Varan's short as heck cameo. This was the original Infinity War, I guess you could say. Um, the final battle is definitely the best part of the movie, one of my favorite moments in Godzilla history, but it definitely could have been better. So, um, I probably made a little bit of a goof up there. Probably right on a bit above Ibra Holder of the Deep, and maybe a little bit tied with this. Mm, not really that much else to say, but it is a Godzilla classic, so I appreciate it in some ways. And plus, the final, it's just that final battle that's just awesome. Really, that's kind of it. Uh, and then we have what is recognized as the worst Godzilla film. Personally, it's not a good Godzilla film. It's not. It's gonna be in D tier, but it's not going in E or F either because here's the thing: the monster scenes are fun. Well, when there actually is the original monster scenes of the film, and him beating the heck out of Gabra was really fun to watch. Has some weird stuff in it. uh, It's what else? There was a weird part where the kid gets snatched by a plant that really threw me off. But there's a bigger story. This kid he's a fan of Godzilla, and then he dreams about being on Monster Island, and then in the meantime he gets kidnapped by these two like criminals, and then his like the fighting and survival stuff he learned on Monster Island, he uses it to his advantage. It's just not really a lot, but like I didn't mind it too much, and I do like the bully message of the film, but it is definitely, I would say, it's kind of the most poorly made Godzilla film. There's so much stock footage to the point where, yeah, it would be my least watched and least enjoyed Godzilla film besides 1998, personally. But, and this is, I don't dislike the movie. This is just me saying it's kind of a not so good Godzilla film. But there is good in there. There is. Once again, a good soundtrack. There is good in somewhere in the movie, though. I'll give it that. Godzilla versus Ghidorah. Whoops. Hey, go back up. There you go. Godzilla versus Ghidorah. I personally actually liked this one. I really did. Um, I'm sorry if I sound like a broken record sometimes. All right. Where am I gonna put it? How about above these two? I really liked Godzilla versus Ghidorah. Because like I think I know people make fun of Hedorah and then they call him the poop doo doo monster, but I find it cool and interesting because Godzilla was originally a message of nuclear destruction and the metaphor for nuclear destruction, and then you have Hedorah, who is the embodiment of pollution. So it was a really cool concept, and it had some interesting kaiju action scenes. I was interested in the human story somewhat. I like the main kid character, and this is where we like the earlier like the other Godzilla previous Godzilla movies we're diving into hero Godzilla at this point. Another good soundtrack again. Um I think Hedorah is a well-made monster. You know, like he has a great message to him. Like he's look what pollution creates. It creates a monster and that stuff. The message of pollution hits strong for me in this movie, and I really dig it. And this is the weirdest Godzilla film ever. There's some weird stuff. Like you have to see it to believe it. But there's some weird animated stuff. There's a scene where a guy hallucinates and he sees people wearing fish masks. It's a lot to take in. Some weird shots in general, but it just ultimately made it the most unique Godzilla film I've ever watched. So, and it's very interesting too. So I know there's there's some Godzilla fans that don't like this one, but personally, I'm one of the Godzilla fans that enjoy this. So, yep. Godzilla versus Gigan. This is gonna be an unpopular Godzilla. This is gonna be an unpopular Godzilla opinion, but I found myself liking Godzilla versus Gigan. Honestly, I personally did. I got really into the final battle at the end. Um, like poor Godzilla and Anguirus are just getting bullied by Gigan and King Ghidorah, but when they fight back at the end, like I just full on root for them. Just like yeah, kick their butts, like wreck them, like mess them up. Like, because the poor guys got bullied by the two villain monsters in the movie in the fight. So I was like really rooting for them, really getting into the fight. I was like, bam, bam, So, uh, the action does seem kind of like it just started to seem kind of tired at this point, though. Haru Nakajima, the famous suit actor for Godzilla, this ended up being his last Godzilla film. He suit acted the character. The the last time he played the character in suit acting, and he said it started to feel tired, tiring, you know, feels a bit drowned out and tired now. So this was ended up being his last movie. You know, RIP, RIP to all the Godzilla suit actors because those guys were champs. Um, and a lot of the Godzilla suit actors, kaiju actors in general, this introduced one of my favorite kaijus in the Godzilla series, Gigan, one of my top tier favorite Godzilla villains. He's a cool, interesting, unique kaiju. You know, he's got that cybernetic chicken look, but like he's got that cybernetic dinosaur bird look. Like he's got hooks for hands, a buzzsaw belly. Um, in the poster, you could see he shoots a laser, but he never did that in the movie. There is a shot where he like flashes a light from that area, but no laser is seen. So the laser ended up being incorporated into later Godzilla stuff. So we don't see it in Godzilla versus Megalon coming up next after this, but they eventually incorporated it, and we see it like in something like Godzilla Final Wars and the Atari Pipeworks fighting game Godzilla trilogy. You know, destroy all monsters melee, save the earth, and unleashed. You know, etc. Um, King Ghidorah's back for another one. Uh, he the Destroy All Monsters takes place in the future in terms of the story and timeline of the Showa era. So this is more like a prequel. You know, it takes place years, you know, decades before Destroy All Monsters. So um, that's why, if you're in case if you're confused, why King Ghidorah is back and alive, because you know 1972, the timeline takes place, and then Destroy All Monsters take place in 1999. But the movie was made in 1968. So Godzilla vs. Gigan. I didn't mind the I didn't mind the human story. Once again, a decent soundtrack. Um, I really got into the movie at points, but definitely not one of my favorites. But unpopular Godzilla opinion, I actually somewhat enjoyed this one, and because it's one of the more disliked Godzilla movies, but a lot of us Godzilla fans really like Gigan, so that's my unpopular Godzilla opinion. I personally somewhat enjoyed Godzilla versus Gigan. My opinion could change though, but for now it's B tier. Godzilla versus Megalon. I slightly enjoy it more than Godzilla versus Megalon versus Gigan. Um, it's the second Godzilla movie I watched because it also came on the same VHS tape as Ebra Horror of the Deep. The English version was called Godzilla versus the Sea Monster. The Good Times VHS tape, you know, that used to belong to my sister. Uh, like this, like yeah, it has its boring moments at times, but like when we finally get into the kaiju action, like it's great, it's amazing, it's fun, it's entertaining. Um, Megalon is very underrated, and I hope he comes back in another movie and maybe he makes it into the MonsterVerse somehow in some way. Jet Jaguar too. There's some people that don't like Jet Jaguar, but personally, I'm one of the many Godzilla fans that really like Jet Jaguar. Gigan's back, which is pretty cool. Godzilla's cool in this one as well. Really diving into superhero Godzilla in this, which I don't mind. Godzilla's a versatile character. I don't mind him as a villain, don't mind him as a hero, but it also depends on the version of Godzilla, you know. And I do have something to say Godzilla minus one, but for now, we wait until I get to that movie. I know some people are gonna get angry at me for that, but hold on. That will wait. For now, it's Godzilla vs Megalon. I like the monsters in the movie. Fun kaiju action. Um, I didn't mind the story too much. Had memorable moments such as the famous drop kick and the Jaguar song, the Jaguar and Godzilla handshake. Um, and then special to me personally because it's my second Toho Japanese Godzilla movie. So have good memories with this one. Really got into the final battle at the end. Very fun. So yeah, really that's kind of it, and a good soundtrack. Yeah, like I said, you guys and gals are gonna hear that a lot. But so not really that much else to say though. I know I've been saying that, but that is what I have to say honestly. Um, but I definitely do like these movies. Um, what else? Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla, another Godzilla classic, straight A tier. Um, I think it's my second favorite Showa film, so it's gonna go right here. I really like Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla. It's a lot of fun, a good, interesting human story, a cool plot. Uh, King Caesar was very interesting. Um, Anguirus, but back at it again. Poor guy gets wrecked in the first act of the film, but it's cool to see him back one last time until we see him like 10, 20, 30 years later. 30 years later in Godzilla Final Wars, uh, Godzilla's 20th anniversary film, and they had to go out with a bang, making him fight a robotic doppelganger. And Godzilla's cool in this movie. The kaiju action gets intense. There's actually blood in this one, so it's like, whoa, intense. And then the interesting, crazy concept, the black hole aliens that create Mechagodzilla, they're space humanoid apes, like wearing human disguise, just like crazy. But like, this also has some famous Godzilla moments, and Godzilla turning himself into a giant magnet and that stuff. That's really cool and fun. Just it's one of the more fun ones, and the soundtrack, one of the better Godzilla soundtracks too. Just a fun Godzilla classic. I mean, what else can I say? Um, One of my favorites. My other favorite Haste. Not there yet. Showa. We're still on Showa. One of my favorite, my top tier Showa films. Godzilla films. Showa Godzilla films. Terror of Mechagodzilla is gonna go alongside too. I really like Terror of Mechagodzilla personally. Um, Sorry if I'm end up spoiling these movies, but a lot of you Godzilla fans watching this, and probably a good chunk of you probably watched all the Godzilla and King Kong films. So Terror of Mechagodzilla, some fun and entertainment, enjoyability like the first film. I do like the tone and theme of this one. It tries to take itself more seriously, which is pretty cool. I think it just overall has the best tone and theme of any Showa film, honestly. I think it's definitely the most advanced and updated Showa film in my own personal opinion. I like the human story personally, and I like the human characters, and Titanosaurus was an interesting, cool inclusion. I know some people are annoyed of his roar and that stuff, but I think he looked cool. I think he looked cool. Um, and his cool gimmick of like creating strong winds with his tail. Mechagodzilla, back at it again. Um, he he still is definitely like an intimidating, powerful threat. He was probably like more interesting in the first film because he showed off more of his abilities and he disguised himself as a fake Godzilla, literally. But maybe he takes a bit of a backseat in this one, but he's still really cool. Godzilla, great as always, in my opinion at least. And I think this introduced my favorite Showa Godzilla suit. Honestly, my favorite design of Godzilla in the Showa era, personally. Great soundtrack as always, but definitely one of the best soundtracks in the Showa era, and some of the best kaiju action in the Showa era. So at least to me, and it has some of the great cinematography, the best cinematography in the Showa era of Godzilla, in my own personal opinion, at least. So yeah, that's where it's gonna be in the A tier. One of my favorite Showa films, at least my own personal opinion. And now, finally, we're back at it with another King Kong movie. King Kong 1976. I think it's kind of overhated. It's over disliked. I'm gonna give it a B tier. I think somewhere in the middle over here. Um, I personally like it slightly more than King Kong Escapes, not by much though. I think it's over disliked. It's what's his name? Dino De Laurentiis. I think he took a cool, unique take on the King Kong story and the Beauty and the Beast story, and in general, with King Kong. And it's a unique, interesting King Kong film, but there's just some weird stuff I don't approve in this movie. Like, you know what I'm talking about. But it's just the weird, creepy King Kong over Jessica Lange. Just, I'm not a fan of that. I think it's the worst part in King Kong history. It even edges out um the Toho King Kong suits. Yep, it's that bad. Um, Other than that, that's the only thing I don't like about the movie. Uh, it does have like it does kind of have its boring moments here and there. No offense, but it tried to do something unique. So there's no dinosaurs in this one. All we see is a giant snake on the island that Kong ends eventually fights. Um, my favorite part of the movie is King Kong, except for the weird, creepy parts. But definitely King Kong and the special effects by Rick Baker. Rick Baker worked on this movie and he created the best practical King Kong, definitely. Um, Amazing suit design, great effects. I really like them. Really awesome. Rick Baker worked on this movie. He ended up working on this before American Werewolf in London, which is pretty cool. Which is his most famous work. Um, and Rick Baker, known for a lot of special effects, movie magic in general. Yeah, Rick Baker rocks. um, he did a really great job. The soundtrack is decent. I'll give it that. Uh, the first movie I would say that tries to make you feel bad, like full on feel bad for King Kong as a character, like, but I think the movies got better as they went on in terms of making me personally care for King Kong as a character. I mean, I grew up with the Peter Jackson King Kong. I already said that already, and we'll get to that soon. But 1976 King Kong, a unique take on the King Kong story and film in general. Uh, Not much to say about it. That's the best I can say. Return of Godzilla in 1984. Back at it with another Godzilla film. All right. Return of Godzilla in 1984 is going to get an S tier. One of my favorite Godzilla movies. I think it's an underrated Godzilla movie. Um, I know personally that's because for some reason, like this movie had trouble like getting into like physical media. Like this is the one that's really one of the ones that was really hard to find until finally Kraken release came along, and like they not only like did Ibra Horror of the Deep and Godzilla vs. Dora and Godzilla vs. Gagan, but they also got to Return of Godzilla as well, which is really happy. That's the release I have. And when I saw this movie, finally, like I really super liked it. I think there's gonna be a bit of a opinion alert here, but a controversial opinion to some maybe. But personally, this is my favorite sequel. Right, this is my favorite sequel to the Gojira 1954 original because it has the elements of what makes a great sequel. It doesn't try to one up the original, like maybe in some areas it probably does, like try to makes it more bigger and epic and that stuff, but it also tries to be its own great film in general. To me, it's got an interesting human plot, a good story, great effects, and they do get better later on in the Heisei era. And Godzilla is awesome in this movie. He's great. He does have his derpy moments with the facial expressions sometimes, but they, funny enough, in King Kong 1976, there's a part where they show a huge King Kong animatronic, and it ended up didn't get used that much because of technical problems. Um, this movie would do a similar thing. You have a giant animatronic Godzilla for some parts. Um, yeah, uh, it looked pretty cool some shots, but it was also mostly a suit in plenty of shots. This introduced the famous weapon, the Super X that fights Godzilla, and I think it's a great follow up reboot sequel to the 1954 original. Um, it has a great emotional ending. I cry for Godzilla at the end. Um, and it has this great other great highlight moments. There's this really cool shot where it looks like it's from Godzilla's perspective. It kind of does almost a bit of the Jaws thing, in my opinion, where we see like a shot where it's like a fog, and then we see like the base or something, like where Godzilla's gonna go absorb radiation. We hear the growling, and it almost looked like they were showing it from Godzilla's perspective in some way. So like that was really awesome. I really liked that. So to me, it's an S tier. And I think it has the great Godzilla message to it. So for me, it's gonna go in S tier. Coming up next is, which one is it? King Kong Lives. Now this is going to be very controversial. I know most people would rank it like down here, or even up here. Maybe a couple of you might put it here, but unpopular opinion warning, opinion alert, and personal perspective alert. I don't see what the hate is for this film. Like, I personally don't get the hate for this movie. I could see in some areas, but like, I just don't know why. I'm putting it in B tier. It could be somewhere around here. Just put it right next to Son of Kong. Don't know where to put it in the B tier, but I personally really like King Kong Lives. I kind of don't get some of the hate for it. I was interested in the story. I really super cared for King Kong as a character in this one, much more than the first one. His design did take a downgrade though, but was not as good as the Rick Baker suit in 1976 King Kong. But other than that, I really super cared for King Kong as a character. I cry whenever the ending happens. Has some great emotional moments, you know, and just it has touching moments in general. And I didn't mind the human characters. I found myself kind of liking them, you know. And plus I can relate to them a lot because I'm an animal lover. So I love animals. And I think this movie had a good soundtrack at points. I just respectfully disagree with a lot of people. Um, that they say this movie's horrible. In my opinion, I like it. I like it. I don't care what people say. In my opinion, my own personal opinion, from my perspective of the film, I personally enjoy it. I don't see what the hate is. I might see it in some areas, but personally, I disagree with people, and I think for me, I like the movie. I don't care what people say. That's consider that my unpopular King Kong opinion and film opinion in general. Next up is Godzilla vs. Biollante. I liked Godzilla vs. Biollante. Hold on, let me go back up here. Um, I liked Godzilla vs. Biollante. Um, uh, where do I put it? I'm gonna put it here. It's a pretty strong B tier. I really like the message of it. Um, my favorite line of the movie is just my favorite line of the movie is I believe the Dr. Shiragami character he says Godzilla and Biollante aren't monsters. The humans who created them are the real monsters. Yeah, it's Godzilla and Biollante aren't monsters. The humans who created them are the real monsters. Like, I really like that. That hits deep. I really like that message. It does have a really good message in general to me. Um, I find the story really interesting and unique. Just like, just like how they got experimental with some of these movies. Like the doctor guy, like Shiragami, he fuses the soul of his daughter with like a plant and Godzilla cells, and that just makes Biolante. And a very tragic part of the story, he loses her in like a accident or something. uh Interesting human story because, and one of the interesting parts that these all these like agents and soldiers and stuff are after Godzilla cells. And Biollante herself is a cool kaiju, really cool kaiju, unique one too. um Godzilla, great as always. um there's some great moments in this Godzilla film, and it introduces what's her name? I really I'm sorry if I get her name wrong, but it's Miki, I believe, the psychic. This introduces her. She's a teenager in this film, and she grows older as the Heisei films go on, and they start to. This is the first like where they try to include some continuity here, which I really like about the Heisei series, and I find awesome about it. Uh, Yeah, I think it's a really good Godzilla film to me personally. I like it. I don't know, I just do. and I like the message of it. Has a unique, interesting soundtrack. Akira Fukube didn't do Return of Godzilla in 1984 or for Godzilla vs. Biollante, but I didn't mind it. I didn't mind it. I really liked Godzilla vs. Biollante. Speaking of Akira Fukube, however, Akira Fukube, he would go on to come back in Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah in 1991. One of my personal favorites. Um, there is some Godzilla fans who are not a fan of this one, but I'm personally one of the Godzilla fans who this is one of his favorites. Um, I really like Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah. I really do. Um, it's just great in my personal opinion. It just I like the unique the unique time travel storyline. I like how crazy stuff gets in this movie. Um, really embracing the fantastical and whimsical with this one. Sure, it's confusing, but I'm able to kind of, you know, get over it and just like put some of the puzzle pieces together just like, "Oh, okay, I get it now." I'm able to put it together. Like sure it's confusing and mixed up at times, but I personally am able to, put it together and just like, "Oh, okay, that makes sense for at least for a fictional universe like this." Cuz in the real world that would make no sense. um Godzilla's great in it. Yep, you're hearing that a lot because I mean Godzilla's awesome character like King Kong. Come on now. Uh King Ghidorah is great here as well. He's intimidating, he's menacing. Um he had a unique, interesting story in this one. He doesn't have the same exact story. There are these creatures, these little tiny dragon creatures called Dorats, and the Futurians, um, the people from the future, they use these three little fellas. They replace them with the Godzillasaurus, and then they mutate into King Ghidorah. And yes, this is the first film to show that yes, Godzilla is a mutated dinosaur. He was an animal, a dinosaur, and then he got mutated by the bomb and became Godzilla. Um, uh, this I really like the human characters in here. I like the android character. He is pretty cool and enjoyable to watch. I really like the plot of this one. I like how crazy it is. Sure, it's mixed up here and there, but it could be probably a mess for some Godzilla fans, which I understand. But personally, I enjoyed it. Um, yep. Uh, the special effects get really advanced in this one. Akira Fukube comes back to compose the scores. Apparently, he didn't like the soundtrack in Godzilla vs. Biollante. He's more of a classical guy when it comes to the soundtrack, so which is respect. I like the Godzilla vs. Biollante soundtrack though, but he really he really did an amazing job on Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah. R.I.P. Akira Fukube. Um, I think he did a great job on the soundtrack. Great kaiju action. Really like it. Most of the kaiju action scenes in the Heisei era, though, are mostly like a light show. It's mostly a bunch of beam blasting and beam fights, but there are some good, like, physical fighting moments. Like when Godzilla grabs King Ghidorah by the tail and swings him around like a rag doll, slams him on the ground again and again. Just introduced Mecha King Ghidorah, which is really cool design. I really like Mecha King Ghidorah. Um, just honestly, it's it's one of my favorite Godzilla films. Personally, that's kind of all I have to say about it. So but it's one of my favorites. A lot of great moments from it. It's one of my favorites. uh, where is it? There it is. Um, Godzilla versus Mothra, the Heisei one, 1992. But in America, it was known as Godzilla and Mothra: The Battle for Earth. I normally just say Godzilla and Mothra: The Battle for Earth just to really separate it from the original Showa Mothra versus Godzilla name, but I also prefer to call it by its original name as well. Uh, I really like this one too. Another one of my favorites. I really like Mothra in it. Batra was a great addition. I feel. I think he was cool. He was basically the dark version of Mothra. Um, that was interesting. His arc at the end. Um, Godzilla, cool in it as always. He did kind of feel like this is one of the films he did kind of feel like a side character, but for what his purpose he served in the movie, he was pretty cool. Um, the soundtrack is also really great and very memorable. I was interested in the human story and the human characters. Um, yeah, I really enjoyed it. Um, and it has I don't know, just has some beautiful emotional moments to it. Godzilla vs King Ghidorah had a pretty emotional moment at the end. I don't know why, because I cared for the human characters. Um, but Godzilla vs Mothra also had a couple emotional moments. Very beautiful scene of Mothra, going from her larvae state to her imago state was also a very beautiful scene. And with the music, just like, oh, it's breathtaking. Um, one of my favorites, honestly. Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla, the Heisei version. Another one of my favorites, honestly. Another one. I really like it. Just sorry to sound like a broken record, but just I personally like the human story. I like the human. I like the story of the movie. I like the human characters. Um, the monsters in it were great. You know, Godzilla like really cared for him as a character in this one, and Rodan was cool as well, and it just introduced Fire Rodan, the interesting one. A lot of Godzilla fans are not fond of this Mecha Godzilla. Personally, I like this Mecha Godzilla. I really do. Um, I like his tanky, shiny build. This one changes up the formula a little bit. There's no aliens here. This time the humans build him off the remains of Mecha King Ghidorah. Like I said, following the continuity. Um, and this reintroduces Godzilla's son. He goes through multiple uh variations in the Heisei series, but that's him growing up. Here he's baby Godzilla and he's adorable. Really like him, and definitely forever will be the best version of Godzilla's son. Um, really liked him. He's adorable, and this movie does have emotional moments, especially the end. Very beautiful ending scene. Felt really bad for Godzilla when he was getting destroyed by Mechagodzilla, uh, but very touching, beautiful moment when Godzilla and his son, reignite at the end, and they go off into the ocean. Another great soundtrack as well, iconic Godzilla soundtrack, just great. Uh, I know Godzilla fans don't like this next one. Well, some of them don't like this next one, but personally, I really did. I liked Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla. I like Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla. Consider that unpopular Godzilla opinion. I don't know. I just really enjoyed Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla. I really did. Um, I think I don't know. Just like I said, just I was interested in the human story, the normal story. I was interested in the story, the human characters. Really cared for Godzilla as a character in this one, and then and I didn't mind Mulgira. I thought he was cool, in my own personal opinion. Um, I know there's Godzilla fans are probably not fond of him, but I think he was cool. Um, I know a lot of Godzilla. I know a good chunk of Godzilla fans don't like Space Godzilla. They make fun of him. They say his name is lame or whatever. But personally, I never saw what the buzz was. I think I find Space Godzilla cool. I don't care what people say. Um, I really like him. He was a cool villain. Um, sure, he may not be as iconic as Mechagodzilla is, but I really like him. I really do. Um, Godzilla's son makes a comeback. Makes a comeback. Baby Godzilla comes back. He's more grown up now, and uh, now he's referred to as Little Godzilla, and he's adorable. And of course, I gotta bring out the figure. There he is, right here. Yay! You might not see him that good, but yep. And of course, because this is from 1994. This is the recent figure of Godzilla. I may not be able to see him all that good, but there he is. There he is. The 1994 one, which ended up becoming my favorite vinyl figure. But yeah, other than that, back to the film. Uh, I personally, unpopular Godzilla opinion, I like Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla. Um, I just do, and I don't think Akira Fukube came back for it. It's a different soundtrack, but I personally like this soundtrack. I still do. Um, and then great effects as well. I really like the effects, and then there's stuff in space. There's some action. You get some kaiju action in space. With Mogira and Space Godzilla, that one fight scene. The final battle is long, but it's pretty cool in my opinion. So yeah. All right, now not much else to say, but unpopular opinion, I really like Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla. Now, Godzilla versus Destroyer, or Destroyer, as famously stated, Godzilla vs. Destroyer is my favorite Godzilla movie. It's my favorite. It's just this is the definitely the one movie I always care for Godzilla as a character. Awesome character always, even in Son of Godzilla where he looks his absolute worst. But in this movie, I just care for Godzilla the most as a character. To me, this is just like peak Godzilla character to me personally. Just I felt so bad for him in the movie. I felt super connected to him as a character in this movie. You feel so bad for him in this movie. This is gonna be my own personal opinion because there are some Godzilla fans who are not fond. There are some people who are not fond of Versus Destroyer, but my own personal opinion, this is just my favorite. So respectfully disagree. Uh, like this is the one movie always cared for Godzilla as a character, but like this is the movie just like where Godzilla is just peak as a character to me. And this movie also has like peak Godzilla's son as well. Godzilla Junior. Um, yep, he's Godzilla Junior is really cool. He's awesome. um, really felt bad for him as well in the movie, and this movie just has a lot of sad moments, like a lot of emotional parts, and its connection to the 1954 original that just makes it even more awesome and more epic. I think even a character from the 1954 original actually shows up for like a cool cameo appearance. And they incorporate the oxygen destroyer into the new villain kaiju's origins. It's just very epic and just very intense and thrilling. Um and they bring like and it really represents, the scariness of the oxygen destroyer of the original 1954 film. Godzilla vs. Destroyer is just my favorite. Destroyer himself, man, what a villain! What a villain, and what a villain kaiju! What a monster! What a villain in general! Like this dude was a monster. Like, bruh, a very scary, intimidating kaiju villain. Like I really rooted against him at the end because that thing he did to Godzilla's son. But I think he's a great kaiju villain, and he would have been a great like final villain for Godzilla. Um, and this brings us to the famous part. Godzilla does technically win in the end, but because this introduces us to one of the most famous forms of Godzilla, the burning Godzilla form. And Godzilla is going to explode and take the whole universe down with him on accident. So they need to. So it's gonna just take the Earth down with him, but eventually it's gonna spread to like the universe and that stuff. It's gonna wreck the whole universe. So like they somehow gotta contain it, and like it Godzilla becomes melted. So, but this leads us to the sad part of the movie where, we get the death of Godzilla, and it's the saddest moment, most emotional moment in Godzilla history. And this is another one of the reasons why it's my favorite. Just like, you just felt so bad for Godzilla in this movie. Just like I cry every time at the end he dies, but there is a glimmer of hope in the end because it shows that either it's the ghost of Godzilla saying farewell, or it's the it's Godzilla Jr. Godzilla's life energy goes into Jr. and makes him an adult Godzilla. You could see it however you want to see it, and there's that tribute at the end in the credits. But just because it's sad and depressing at moments, but like it has great emotionality and just I just care for it, sympathize for Godzilla so much as a character in this film, and it has definitely one of the better action sequences in a Heisei Godzilla film. And I'm gonna have the same reasoning as to why a certain King Kong film is my favorite. Um, yep, but Godzilla vs. Destroyer is actually my favorite Godzilla film, and those are the reasons I stated as to why. There's some animated movies on here, but I personally never seen them. I don't know if I will ever get it to them. So sadly, they're gonna be disincluded, but they're gonna be there. This is just the live action movies only. So, oh, Godzilla 1998 is up next. It's D tier. I'm sorry. It's eh no a C. Give it a C because I don't think it's as bad as a kaiju film as everybody makes it out to be. But this movie didn't have all that much passion behind it. It really didn't. Besides some cool practical effects, and that was really it. Roland Emmerich, I don't think he had passion for Godzilla. Um, this like, eh, this this didn't really feel like a Godzilla movie all that much at times. Had boring moments and just it didn't feel like Godzilla all that much. Besides the roar and oh, it's a nuclear radioactive dinosaur creature. That's really it. And Godzilla doesn't really look like Godzilla. This they ended up renaming this and renaming this fella Zilla, and he ended up becoming the not true Godzilla. He ended up becoming Zilla. So, but looking at Zilla himself, I think Zilla is a cool kaiju, and I felt bad for him in the movie. Um, I did care for his character in some way, and I do have a soft spot towards this movie because it spawned the animated series, which became my introduction to the character. So, and I do have some good nostalgia for that animated series. I do remember enjoying it. I don't know what I would think of it now, but I probably got to track down like a DVD of it or something. But I remember it being cool. This movie does have highlight moments. Uh, I don't mind. There are parts that people complain about, but I don't mind it. It's got some enjoyable moments, but it's gonna go in C tier because I don't know, just definitely not nowhere near to one of my favorites, and just one of my least favorites. Godzilla 2000, or as the Godzilla Save the Earth announcer says it, Godzilla 2000. Um, Honestly, one of my favorites in my own personal opinion. I really like this one. Put it right here next to between these two. Um, It's one of my favorites personally. I just really like it. I really do. Um, I like that message at the end. The epic cool lines at the end, and just like very epic and intense at the end. Like why does like Godzilla hates this and he hates us, right? Why does Godzilla protect what he hates? Like it's almost like as if it also says like because it's his to destroy, it's his vengeance, you know and there's that thing saying like maybe Godzilla's incital was or something, like it's just like, and I look at that in like the way that I want to look at it. Like Godzilla was originally a victim of World War II. you know Godzilla's a broken tragic creature, that stuff. So Yep, it just and it just goes to show like we can be victims of a war maybe. Like yeah, despite Godzilla being the metaphor for nuclear destruction and destroying stuff, and somehow we can relate to him as a character. So like got very deep there at the end. I think Orga is a cool original monster. I think he's really cool. The spaceship UFO thing that helps creates the Orga creature is also pretty interesting. I was interested in the plot and I did like the human story personally, the characters. And Godzilla, one of my favorite designs personally. Really like the 2000 Godzilla. Um, I like his unique fiery orange reddish atomic breath. Really cool. And then Akira Fukube, I believe, passed away. Um I don't know when Akira Fukube passed away. Either it was shortly after Godzilla vs. Destroyer, or if it was Tomoyuki Tanaka, I'm not sure. But they both have passed away, so R.I.P. Tomoyuki Tanaka and Akira Fukube. So R.I.P. both of them. Rest in peace. But Godzilla 2000, um, this has the Millennium Era comes in with a new unique soundtrack of, you know, Godzilla movies. So I like the soundtrack of Godzilla over 2000. I really do. Um, like this is where we get really advanced in effects. So and it's funny, it's not long after Godzilla versus Destroyer. So that's why Godzilla 2000 kind of gives off a little bit of Heisei vibes sometimes with its tone and theme sometimes. I don't know. It just has a little bit of the leftover Heisei Godzilla magic in it. And that's probably another reason why I like it too. So, um, but got really advanced in effects, and I personally enjoyed it. I don't know. I personally enjoyed it. It's one of my favorites. I know some Godzilla fans are split between it, but personally, it's one of my favorites. Godzilla versus Megaguirus. Um, Unpopular Godzilla opinion. I really liked Godzilla versus Megaguirus. Actually, I don't know. I just did. I just did. Um, because I know this is a lot of one of Godzilla. Like in terms of Godzilla fans, this is like one of their least favorites. I'll put it over here. Um, because in terms of Godzilla fans, this is like one of their least favorites in the series, and it's their least favorite in the Millennium Era. I think it's the least best Millennium Era Godzilla film, but personally, I think it's good. I mean, I enjoyed it honestly. I didn't mind the Megaguirus antagonistic monster villain in the movie. I think she was pretty interesting and she was intimidating and creepy. I thought Godzilla was cool in it. It introduced a very famous Godzilla body slam, which one of my favorite moments ever in Godzilla, along with others. I like the soundtrack in it. I did like the human story, and I did like the story. I did like the story, and I did like the human characters, and it has great kaiju action in it. You know, I like the fight scenes. You know, this movie also has some favorite Godzilla moments of mine in general. So like I do like some moments in this movie. So, my unpopular Godzilla opinion, I personally like Godzilla versus Megaguirus. It's actually one of my favorites. So, but it's kind of you notice it is in between B and A tier though. So, but I personally enjoyed it. GMK. Um, and a lot of you are gonna agree with me on this. So GMK is gonna go um in the S ranking. One of my all time favorites. GMK is awesome. I just has everything you're looking for in a Godzilla movie. A great, unique, interesting Godzilla. A great kaiju's, great monster action, great cinematography, great effects, great soundtrack, great human characters, great story. Just everything about it was great in my opinion. Now Godzilla's a versatile character. Um, Not my favorite version of Godzilla, but I like every version of Godzilla. So, but I like to see this as more of a unique, interesting version of Godzilla. Like I don't see this Godzilla as the Godzilla, more like a unique version of him because he's definitely not a normal Godzilla. He's resurrected by the spirits and souls of World War II. So like he's like resurrected and possessed by the spirits of World War II victims. Like that's definitely not a normal Godzilla right there. And when you look at him, like he may look traditional and all that stuff, but until you see that menacing face and those eyes of death, like no pupil in his eyes, just creepy looking, just menacing. Whenever I think of an evil Godzilla or a villain Godzilla, my mind will always go to this Godzilla right here. Um, I know some people were not fond of King Ghidorah becoming a good guy, but I like to see this as more like a unique Godzilla, experimental Godzilla movie that's supposed to have like an important message attached to it. And I think this movie 100% works. Now, I'm not all like familiar with Gamera all too much. Um, but I did hear the director who made the Gamera Heisei trilogy also directed this movie, so it's pretty cool. And in terms of the kaiju community, uh, the kaiju fan base, the people who are fan of tokusatsu films, that is highly praised as like some of the best kaiju films of all time. The Gamera Heisei trilogy. So, but the same director who directed those movies also directed this. So, really cool. Honestly, very awesome. Just what can I say? What else can I say? I mean, GMK is awesome. My opinion, great Godzilla film, and another S tier in my own personal opinion. I don't know if you all are gonna agree. I really super liked Godzilla against Mechagodzilla. It's just another one of my all time favorites. Um, Now the weird thing is that about the Millennium era is that it didn't follow us like one continuity. Almost every movie was a reboot sequel. And yes, even though Godzilla vs. Megaguirus looks like it would be a sequel to Godzilla 2000, it is not. So another reboot sequel, and Godzilla 2000 itself is its own reboot sequel. Funny thing, Godzilla 2000 wasn't really released in 2000. It came out in 1999. It was released in America in 2000, weirdly enough. But yeah, it's Godzilla 2000. That's the name of it. GMK was another reboot sequel, and so was Godzilla against Mechagodzilla. But one of my top tier favorite Godzilla designs, great human characters, great story, really like the awesome connection to the 1954 original, another favorite sequel of mine to the 1954 original, along with GMK and Return of Godzilla in 1984, with 1984 being my personal favorite, but an awesome sequel to the 1954 movie along with GMK. Really like Godzilla against Mechagodzilla. My favorite version of Mechagodzilla definitely. Um, that version of Mechagodzilla just not about Kuryu. He just had the most character of any Mechagodzilla personally, and like he was like the most interesting. And his link to the 1954 original Gojira was like awesome. Like him being made out of the bones of the original 1954 Godzilla, and his cool, interesting, scary gimmick is that if sometimes if he hears the roar of Godzilla, this it's like the spirit within the bones awakens, and his like the spirit of the original 1954 Godzilla haunts this Mecha Godzilla. So like, and eventually there's parts where he possesses him, and he takes control and he starts wreaking havoc. And I like Godzilla. I know some Godzilla fans like don't pay attention to this version of Godzilla all that much. I still really like this version of Godzilla personally. Um, but one of my favorite designs of the character, definitely, and definitely, this movie definitely has its highlight moments. So really great, great soundtrack as well. It's another S tier. It's another one of my top tier favorite Godzilla movies of all time. And the same thing's gonna go for this one, the sequel, Tokyo SOS. Now I know some of you will probably disagree, but like I said, this is just my list. You don't have to agree with me. This is just me sharing. So Godzilla Tokyo SOS, um, another. So like this one's unique. Actually, it's not another reboot sequel. It's actually a follow up to Godzilla against Mechagodzilla. So this is the what's called as the Kuryu duology or the Kuryu saga. So following up from the previous film Godzilla against Mechagodzilla, uh, Kuryu's back at it again. Um, Once again, more interesting story and some more cool kaiju action, and Godzilla's back again, and he's out for payback, and he's back wreaking havoc again. He's got this big nasty scar on his chest from Kree using the ultimate weapon that Mechagodzilla had in the first film, called the Absolute Zero Cannon. It doesn't come back in this movie because it got badly damaged, and they changed it to another laser cannon. Mothra is in this one, which is really cool. Uh, there's also a cool message of this movie, like don't disrespect the dead, and that's another reason why Mothra is here. Um, the twin fairies, like you can't mess with the dead. It's disrespectful. Like the bones of the original Godzilla must be returned to the ocean. Um, you know, it's a it's a it's a disrespect to nature and that stuff. I really like that message of it, and it's got great human story. Really like the human story in this, and I really like the human characters. Um, I think I slightly enjoy the first against Mechagodzilla more because I think it was more enjoyable. But this one is also awesome because it also felt like a spiritual goodbye to the Godzilla series, and also a great connection to the 1954 original. So personally, I liked it. It's one of my favorites, and the emotionality, the emotional parts of the movie really get me. So we get emotional towards the end. um, Godzilla Final Wars, a very subjective and decisive Godzilla movie. Um, yep, you could probably tell, right? I already placed it. Um, Godzilla Final Wars. Some Godzilla fans love it. Some Godzilla fans hate it. A very subjective Godzilla film, but personally, I really like Godzilla Final Wars. It's one of my favorites. I respect your opinion if you don't like it, but I know some people will probably put it down in the B tier or the C tier or F, like D tier, one of the least favorites. But I know some Godzilla fans hate this one. But remember, agree to disagree. It's what we do. Um, Everyone's gonna have their own different personal opinions on fictional art. This is mine. Um, where I say Godzilla Final Wars is one of my favorites. But I respect your opinion if you don't like it. But Godzilla Final Wars is one of my favorite movies. Godzilla films. It's just like how crazy this film is. It was a great like farewell to like the Godzilla series. It was a great closure. It ended off with a bang. Ended the Godzilla series with a bang. A great tribute to the Showa era. Um, a great farewell to the Godzilla series and to Godzilla as a character. A great ending to the series. I just really super like Final Wars. It's just fun. It's entertaining. I don't mind. Maybe it's a bit too long in some areas. Maybe overstates its welcome in some areas. But personally, I end up ignoring that because how fun and entertaining this film is. I like the human characters. I like this insane, crazy plot. Um, this has my favorite aliens in any Godzilla movie because they have this cool look to them and that stuff. And one of my favorite non kaiju villains in Godzilla. The main, I think, I don't know, he's it's the Exilian leader guy. Um, very entertaining and enjoyable. I just like how crazy this film is. Some of the best kaiju Godzilla action I've seen. Um, some of the fight scenes are really short. That's kind of a nitpick, but I think it makes up for it because just how fun the film is. Great soundtrack, one of my favorite Godzilla soundtracks, and you know, very special to me because this is like my birthday Godzilla movie. The year 2004. So, and like this is like the movie, where Godzilla got his like star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Um, and I don't mind the look of Godzilla in this movie. I personally really like it. Really like it. On this poster here, it's weird, but in the actual film, I personally really like it. Some people don't like it, but oh well, agree to disagree. Um, I can see why people are not fond of this design of Godzilla or this movie, but I personally really like it. And the new villain monster, he's really cool. Monster X, and he turns into Kaiser Ghidorah. Really epic and cool. And going from another S tier film, at least in my own personal opinion, into another, and that is the Peter Jackson King Kong. Uh, this is my favorite King Kong movie. It is. It's. I'm sorry, no, this is kind of unpopular opinion, but I'm one of the rare people that will put this above the 1933 original. I just really super like it. I don't know. I just do. But my reasons to why just I know I have a form of biasness because this is my introduction to the King Kong character, this movie right here. But when I rewatched it like time and time again, just everything about it I'm invested in, the story, the characters, the powerful message. I think the message to me just hits harder than the 1933 original. Plus, I really super care for King Kong in this movie. This is the King Kong movie where I really care for King Kong the most as a character. Like, I really like his design. I know some people say he just looks like a big giant gorilla, but to me, I don't know. Depends on how you grew up with the character. Plus, I still see this as King Kong. I think this did the Beauty and the Beast love story the best, cause like it's not even like in a weird way. It's just more like he's a misunderstood creature. He's an animal. Like he may be viewed as a monster and that stuff, but he's misunderstood and that stuff. And it's not even like the Beauty and the Beast story. It's not even takes it in a weird way. It comes off as very natural and great. I think it's done well, the best the best. It's more like an animal and human like friendship basically. Like it's great and just like and all like the different great stuff in the movie and just Peter Jackson's, love and respect and passion for the 1933 original and you know like just peak King Kong character to me. And just the CGI motion capture effects were great. I know like practical effects will always be better than CGI motion capture effects, but just the emotionality in the movie, just like everything else I really super like about the movie, it doesn't end up not mattering to me that much. And plus, I really like the CGI motion capture effects in the film. Um, Great action scenes. The emotional scenes really get me. I cry every time at the end King Kong dies. Like poor guy. Just, uh, I know you have a weird casting choice. Jack Black is Carl Denham, but I didn't mind him. I think he did a good job playing like a like an antagonistic businessman somewhat. You know, he's not the main villain of the movie or the main antagonist, but he's kind of close, honestly. I think he plays good on being like a like a not so good businessman guy. Like he's very obsessive and that stuff. I personally liked Adrian Brody as Jack Driscoll, and Naomi Watts did an amazing job as Ann Darrow. Um, I really like the meta stuff in this movie, just like the fourth wall breaks are funny. There's references to the 1933 original. Um, the soundtrack by James Newton Howard is amazing. I really like it. Skull Island is great. My favorite Skull Island. The creatures on it is great. The natives are scary as heck. Uh, Great acting moments in this movie. Just a very beautiful, well-made film, a work of art like the 1933 original, and you rarely get that because normally the great original and poopy remake. This masterpiece original and masterpiece remake to me. Personally, the reason why I slightly prefer it over the 1933 original is because I slightly care for King Kong more. Like I just care for King Kong a lot more as a character. I had no like I do feel bad for King Kong, but sorry, no offense. This is my personal opinion. I don't think I had no connection to King Kong as a character in the 1933 original. I just kind of felt bad for him that he died at the end, but that's really it. But King Kong 2005, just like, man, related to this Kong a lot, connected with him as a character a lot. It just, I felt so bad, like, just like, I want to see this guy have a happy ending, but he just doesn't get that. Um, Very tragic. You feel the tragedy at the end, and you could just feel Peter Jackson's just love, respect, and passion for the 1933 original. So to me, in my own personal opinion, it's my favorite King Kong film. The one instance where I will probably prefer, a prefer the original. One of the rare instances where I prefer a remake over the original 1933 film. Over like so, I'm trying to say that correctly. Hold on. One of the rare instances where I prefer the remake over the original, but both are awesome. So yeah, Peter Jackson King Kong, my favorite movie, King Kong film, and one of my favorite movies of all time. Godzilla 2014. Um, where do I put you? I think 2014. Uh, I'll just put it right here. I think 2014 is a dang good Godzilla film. I know this movie has its haters. I know some Godzilla fans look down upon it. Some Godzilla fans said it aged really well, and it makes the other MonsterVerse movies look like total poo, donkey doo doo, or it aged the worst in the MonsterVerse films. I don't know. Personally, to me, I think it's a good Godzilla film. It's one of my favorites because I don't know. I just think it's special to me. I really like it. It's unique. It's interesting. Um, it does have its flaws, but no movie's perfect. But it does have its boring moments here and there. The human characters could have been much more better, and that ends up becoming one of the little problems of the MonsterVerse. Um, yeah, but sometimes it doesn't even feel like a Godzilla movie. That's one of my nitpicks or like preferences about it. Like I don't. Another reason why I prefer other Godzilla movies over it, but it's not a full on problem with the movie because when this movie was made, they didn't have access to um all the other stuff, that made the Godzilla magic, but that made the Godzilla magic, but like didn't have access to like a more Toho-ish Godzilla design, didn't have access to some of the classic cool roars, didn't have access to, some of the cool classic themes, you know. So it's not really a problem with the film. It's more like a it's more like a preference. So, but despite the problems I have with it, I think it's got a good soundtrack. It's got good CGI effects, good kaiju action. The build up, suspense, and thrills in this movie are just so well done, great and amazing. Um, just awesome, just in general. Um, yeah, in this movie, gave birth to the MonsterVerse, gave us a cool version of Godzilla. You know, brought us a return of King Kong pretty early, and it also gave us more Toho films. Yeah, so there you go. Um, uh, Shin Godzilla. I'm sorry, I'm not really a fan of this one. Oh yeah, 2014 also brought us the rematch we've been waiting for, King Kong versus Godzilla. I'm gonna try to hurry this up quick. I don't want this video to drag on more longer. So, Shin Godzilla, sorry, one of my least favorite ones. I'll put it right there though. I do have a lot of respect and appreciation towards it, though. It's just not really my Godzilla movie, but has a lot of boring moments. Like, I'm not all that into the human characters all that much. I'm not interested in the human story all that much. Um, the plot is interesting in some areas, but I just the movie just drags so much, and just like, and I don't know, just not really that much to say about this one, but it's it's a great addition to the Godzilla franchise. Shin Godzilla, an awesome version of the character. I do like him. Not really my Godzilla, but he's a great version of the character. I'll give him that. He's unique, he's interesting, he's fascinating, he's creepy, he's intimidating. I really like him. Um, it's got a great soundtrack too. The soundtrack is really great. The Godzilla scenes are some of the best moments in Godzilla history, no joke. They're awesome, and I do see what the director was trying to do with this movie, and I think he did a good job for what he succeeded in some areas. At least to me. At least to me. And I have like great respect and appreciation towards this one. So, yep. Kong School Island. I think Kong School Island, I'm sorry, it could have. I think it's a great film. It's a great movie, but I feel like it could have been done better, personally. In some areas, you know, I think Kong School Island is a enjoyable kaiju flick, but I just feel like it was a step down compared to Peter Jackson's King Kong because I do not care for King Kong that much as a character in this movie. I'm sorry. I just didn't. And just like this, some of the scenes just felt so forced and rushed in terms of trying to make you care for King Kong's character. It just didn't work. I'm sorry. And that's the biggest flaw of the movie that just really drags it down. And I prefer other tones and themes of like eh, I'm just not super on the tone and theme of the movie, but I do appreciate it. Um, however, human characters they're all right. Um, but John Goodman was really good, no pun intended. Um, but John Goodman was really good. Samuel Jackson was great as the human bad guy in the movie, and John C. Reilly, one of my favorite human characters in a monster movie and a kaiju film in general. John C. Reilly killed it in the role. Awesome. My favorite part of the movie, honestly, like had a big connection towards him. Felt relatable to him. It's very sympathetic. I sympathize with him a lot, and he brought out the most best emotional scenes in the movie. Um, the soundtrack is alright. I think the action scenes are great. They're really good. Um, yeah, they're great. Uh, not much to say. Um, I think it's a good movie, but personally, not one of my favorite. Not close to being my favorite King Kong movie, but yep. Godzilla King of the Monsters. Personally, Godzilla King of the Monsters. It's gonna be somewhere here. I'll just put it right next to the other monsters films. One of my favorite Godzilla movies, personally. It's one of my favorites. I really enjoyed it. Very awesome theater experience. Will never forget that theater experience. Um, watching this, it's very special to me in that way because it's my first Godzilla movie in the theater, and I really like the tone and theme of the movie, minus the weird MCU humor jokes. Those are just horrible. My least favorite part of the movie, in my opinion, the worst part of the movie. There's this whole thing like saying like is this movie pro nuclear or something, or is it trying to say that nuclear weapons are good? I saw a good video on it. Try to find it. And the guy pointed out a really good point as to why it's a subjective Godzilla film. And personally, I'm more on the positive side where I see it as a great Godzilla film, despite the flaws it has. This movie definitely has flaws, but personally, I really super enjoyed the movie. I think it, it just has this awesomeness to it. I really like it. Great, despite the overkill on the human cutaways, the monster scenes are great. I just think it's good. It's just like fun kaiju action. It's just a very epic and big Godzilla film. Like very epic and cool. Godzilla's great in it. Uh, the other three main monsters, King Ghidorah, Rodan, and Mothra, are also really great. This is one of my favorites. Soundtrack by Baron McCree, awesome. Cool retakes on Cared for Kube. Just a great, to me, it's a great love letter to the Toho movies. It's just like I don't care what people say. I really like it, but agree to disagree, like they always say. Um, I really like it, and I really like some of the cinematography moments. Sure, like maybe 2014 did it better in some areas, but personally, King of the Monsters is one of my favorite movies. But if you don't like it, that's fine. Um, it's personally one of my favorites. Um, some also good, emotional, beautiful parts as well. Godzilla versus Kong. One of my favorite crossover movies of all time. Um, Godzilla versus Kong. Really like it. I don't care what people say. I respect your opinion if you don't like it, but it's one of my favorites. Godzilla versus Kong. Really good. It's gonna go in the S tier. Um, yeah, one of my favorites personally. It's just one of my favorite King Kong movies. One of my favorite old time King Kong and Godzilla movies. Um, just I talked about how much I really like this movie multiple times. Um, great kaiju action, great special effects. Um, I really like Mechagodzilla in the movie. He was a cool villain. Um, the the cool rivalry between Godzilla and Kong in the movie, great, just great, and like not a lot to say honestly. A very special movie to me though. Like I finally got the King Kong versus Godzilla movie I wanted. The rematch. You know, I always wanted. So, but definitely not perfect. But oh well. You know, no movie's flawless, but it's one of my favorites. So, and Godzilla and King Kong crossover, and one of my favorite crossover pairings. So one of my favorite movies of one of my favorite crossover movies of all time. Almost done. As you can tell, I'm getting tired. We're almost 2 hours. I can't believe that. Godzilla minus one. I'm gonna try to make this as simple as possible. Godzilla minus one. Um, I'm gonna place it right here. Uh, eh, I'll give it in the S tier out of respect. Um, my opinions kind of changed on this movie a bit. Very unpopular Godzilla opinion, but a great, awesome, amazing Godzilla film. High respects and appreciation towards it, but I just, eh, my opinions kind of changed on it a bit. I feel like the movie, for me personally, I feel like the movie could have been better in the small areas, and something about me just prefers 1954 more. Um, and I just, there's just something about I like about the others. I prefer more preference wise. Maybe just put it here. Yeah, that's where it's gonna go. But I think it's a modern masterpiece of a movie. It's really great. Awesome message, awesome story. It's great. I mean, not that much else to say about it. A lot of people talked about how amazing it was, but because this is supposed to be more of a traditional Godzilla, I wish, I cared for Godzilla more as a character in this movie. I wish that tragedy would have been associated with him. Now, I know we have GMK right here, but it's supposed to be more of a unique version of Godzilla. This is a more traditional Japanese Toho Godzilla. I feel like that tragedy should be associated with him. Um, like that's probably my least favorite part of the movie, and I feel like I prefer it as a shorter tale, which is why I prefer 1954 over to this. But yeah, minus one, still a great, fantastic film, still one of my favorites. I just wish in those smaller areas it could have been better. But it's got everything great you're looking for in a Godzilla movie. Well, almost everything. Um so yeah, well that's about it. So I know I did notice something though. Godzilla X Kong the New Empire is sadly not on here. This sadly wasn't updated, but Godzilla X Kong the New Empire is one of my favorites. Just imagine it right here with Godzilla versus Kong. Just imagine it right here with Godzilla versus Kong. That's where it's gonna go. A very decisive and subjective film like King of the Monsters and Godzilla Final Wars, but personally, I'm one of the people that really like the movie. One of my favorite King Kong and Godzilla movies, and one of my favorite crossover movies. Great action, cool cinematography, great special effects in plenty of areas. Maybe not all the time, but in some areas. I know the plot is crazy and all over the place, but um, I personally enjoyed it, and I didn't mind the human characters. I thought the human characters were entertaining. It's a great, awesome, fun popcorn flick, and had an amazing time watching it in the theater. So, so despite what flaws it may have, personally, I didn't pay too attention to them or mind them, honestly, or even notice some of them. It's one of my favorites. I don't care what people say. But your opinion is respected if you don't like it, because I could see why. But personally, to me, it's one of my favorite popcorn flick movies, and one of my favorite King Kong Godzilla movies, and one of my favorite crossover films. Mothra's also great in it as well. I know she didn't have a lot to do, but I really liked her. Like she was great. I don't care what people say. Uh, I like the Scar King villain. I thought he was cool. Sure, he had some wasted potential, maybe, but I just think he was a great villain. Honestly, um, I really liked Shimo. Great addition, and Suko was also a great addition as well. So, if you want to know more about my opinion on the movie, go watch my older like review on it after watching it in theater back in 2024 when it came out. A year ago. My goodness. Whew. All right. Anyways, yeah, it would be in the S tier if it was here. But sadly, this didn't get updated. But it will be in the S tier. So we're going to be getting more newer Toho Godzilla movies, and we're getting Godzilla X Kong Supernova. But anyway, that's gonna be it. I wanted to I want to start making like more tier list videos. So let me know if you guys and gals want to see any more. If you don't like the video, I'm sorry. Well, I tried, but if you like the video, then go ahead, leave a like on it, and let me know what is your favorite Godzilla and King Kong movie, and what is your least favorite King Kong and Godzilla movie. Do you agree with my list? Do you disagree with my list? Let me know down in the comment section below. But no fighting, no toxicity allowed. As long as we respect each other, that's welcomed. Now that is, welcomed. That's there. But no toxicity, no like harassing each other's opinions, no disrespecting like no putting down each other's like thoughts and feelings on the movies. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you like the content in my channel, be sure to subscribe. Don't be shy. And if you like this video, well, don't be shy. Give it a thumbs up. Um, Thank you guys and gals so much for watching. Take care. Have a good night. Good morning. Good afternoon, whatever time of the day you're watching this. Thank you, guys and gals, and I love you all. And as good old Kong Spidey Zilla says, peace out.